Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s with this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes, 1987 at online booksellers everywhere. So-called griot reporter Marc Lamont Hill took all of the apprehension and anxiety some black people have regarding the upcoming Hulu documentary to take a swipe at heterosexual black men. All video used in this commentary is under fair use of United States copyright law of 1976 and is used in conjunction with my commentary.
Being made about this Freaknik documentary. A whole bunch of people talking about whose names and faces and voices and bodies are going to show up on this video from the 90s. And most of the conversation is about whether or not women will be exposed on this documentary, whether people's mamas and girlfriends and wives and daughters are going to show up in a Freaknik documentary. And I hear you. But that's the wrong issue. Look, I was outside in the 90s. I've been to Freaknik as an aspiring young journalist covering the story, of course. And when I was there, I saw what was happening. It's not just about women being half naked. It's not about women's hypersexuality. No, Freaknik is about men ogling, men fondling. Freaknik had a lot to do with male hypermasculinity and sexual violence. Freaknik is a rape fest. It is a sexual assault fest. That's not the only thing going on out there. I'm not trying to demonize or pathologize black people, but if we're talking about the worst parts of Freaknik, it wasn't about the actions of women. It was about the disgusting actions of us men. And so when you watch Freaknik, you don't need to be worried about mama, daughter, sister, girlfriend. You need to be worried about brother, son, husband, or yourself, and whether or not you were engaged in some of the worst parts of patriarchal culture, whether you were part of the worst parts of rape culture and misogyny and sexual violence. When we talk about Freaknik and the way we talk about Freaknik, it's a representation of all the problems we have in a society that always blames women for the actions of men. So don't check the women, check yourself.
Now, Marc Lamont Hill is a slimy opportunist looking to try to create a narrative to demonize black men as related to all of the apprehension and anxiety many black people have regarding this Hulu documentary revolving around the Freaknik event of 1994. And as he looks to try to pander to many of these black women out here who have skeleton bones in their graveyards and don't want those skeletons dug up, what he hopes to do is try to create a narrative to demonize black men and try to make black men the image of sexual predation. And that's the only reason why he's making statements talking about how Freaknik was an event all about sexual predation and about how black men were looking to go out here and participate in the sexual violation of women and participate in what he calls grape culture. These narratives are designed to try to stoke fear in the black women and the non-black masses, looking to try to promote black men as the face of sexual predation while breathing brand new life into the stereotype of the black brute. This is the narrative that bootlicks like Marc Lamont Hill want to push as related to this Freaknik event. However, this Freaknik event never was about all of this so-called sexual promiscuity when it originally began. Now, the Freaknik event was conceived in 1982 by Spelman College, and it was something created to be an end of the school year party for black women, and the name Freaknik came from combining the words freaky and picnic, and was partially inspired by the Chic song Le Freak, which was a popular song in the 80s. And it was a party that they had in Atlanta to again celebrate the end of the semester, and it was a party that people just came to have fun at. Now, the Spelman College decided to stopped being involved with the event for liability reasons, and over time, as other sponsors came to get involved with the event, Freaknik went from being a event of 15,000 people to an event that eventually meant to become over 300,000 people over the course of 5 years, and the event became extremely popular in the Atlanta area, and over time again became a party that was a positive event about kids just going out and having a good time. That was the original narrative of Freaknik as it was created by its original creators at Spelman College. However, as time went on, the Freaknik event eventually got to become commercialized because so many people were coming to attend this spring break party, and as over 300,000 people were coming to attend this event, that's when the commercialization came in. And in 1993, a woman from Washington, D.C., Christina Copeland, and Ron Green produced another event at the Lakeview Fairgrounds called a Freaknik, and again changed the entire narrative of the Freaknik because they decided to invite Luke Campbell from 2 Live Crew, who was just coming off the fame of his hit song Me So Horny. And once they invited Luke Campbell, this completely changed the entire nature of the event and changed the entire narrative around the event, because the original narrative around the event, as created by the Sisters of Spelman College, was supposed to be a picnic to celebrate most of the students at Spelman College, again, at spring break, and about them in having a good time. But once the Christina Copeland and Ron Green got involved, they weren't from Atlanta, they weren't from Spelman College, and they changed the narrative to fit the narrative of white supremacy, and that's when we saw more non-HBCU individuals coming to the party. And as those non-HBCU individuals came to the party, what they wanted to do was participate in a lot of wild partying, participating in a lot of nudity and sexual promiscuity, and the entire event of Freaknik became twisted into this completely perverted whole story that white supremacists ran with and decided to create this narrative of Freaknik being some big orgy of sex and sexual violence, and that's what Marc Lamont Hill wants to push on platforms like the Griot. And as he's out here pushing this narrative, he is out here trying to promote anti-black racism by saying that Freaknik was a place that was a place for people to participate in all of this sexual violence and sex crimes. And again, it just shows me how incompetent a reporter Marc Lamont Hill is, because after just doing a little bit of Google research on the entire Freaknik event, I was able to find out what the Freaknik event was all about. And this is just me doing, again, basic research, but Marc Lamont Hill wants to tell us, oh, he was there at the Freaknik, when he's just basically just trying to frame a narrative that will make his white supremacist paymasters happy and tell them what they want to hear. Because what Marc Lamont Hill's white supremacist paymasters want to hear is that the Freaknik party was an orgy of these just wild and out of control black men who were out here lusting after black female college students to the point where they couldn't control themselves. That is what Marc Lamont Hill wants people to believe about Freaknik, and he wants us to believe that these black men were out here looking to go out here and sexually violate a whole lot of black women, when this was never the case at all. Now, as somebody who went to college in the 90s, I can tell you, if such a case of this black men wilding out like this was true, you would have heard about this in the media, because we were only 5 years away from the Central Park Five, who basically went to jail on false charges of sexually violating the Central Park jogger. And around 1994, when I was about to graduate college, the O.J. Simpson trial was being broadcast all across the country. And in that case, O.J. Simpson was being presented as the face of sexual predation in 1994. So if there was a group of black men participating in these kinds of sex crimes, then this would have been on the news as the main story if this were the case. So this is where Marc Lamont Hill is just proven to be a liar, because again, all I had to do was a little bit of basic research and again reminisce about my time at Monroe College, where I was in college at the time learning business, and again learning about the business of how people create narratives. Because what Marc Lamont Hill wants to do is try to say, oh, black men are the face of sexual predation. They were participating in all sorts of sexually predatory behavior, because what they want to do is further twist the entire story of Freaknik into this whole orgy of sexually promiscuous black men who were wilding out, when in actuality, if many black men who were going to college at the time, many brothers out here that where they weren't even about any of that. No, what was happening was you got a lot of people who were hopped up on Luther Campbell and his Two Live crew. And again, this is just a microcosm of individuals who were out here wilding out like this. And what Marc Lamont Hill and those whites in the mainstream media want to do is make it look like, oh, there was a bunch of wild black men, again, out of control at this event in 1994, when this was just the complete white supremacy looking to twist the narrative as related to this event, which was a good time for many young HBCU students to have for many years. And again, they want to turn it from the cheek song about in the 80s of just about having a good time into the freaky sexual perversion that Luther Campbell was all about, breathing brand new life into the story of the wild black brute. And this is what they wanted to push as related to this whole Freaknik event. And what's got a lot of older black people freaked out is the fact that this whole documentary looks to air the dirty laundry of many of these black men and black women. And that's where I also have a bone to pick with Marc Lamont Hill as he twists the story of this whole Freaknik event. Now, as this story he's been going on, Marc Lamont Hill has gone out here and looked to demonize the black man, but he looks to give a pass to many of the black women who participated in sexual promiscuity at this Freaknik event. He looks to give a pass to these black women who willingly went to this Freaknik event, and they went out here and hooked up with dudes. And what he wants to do is make it look like these women were innocent victims, when many of these women were willing participants who wanted to go out here and participate in this casual sex with these different guys down at the Freaknik. And he wants to go out here and try to virginize these women, when many of these women were never innocent at all. No, many of these women, even when they were teenage girls, were out here being sexually promiscuous, and what they wanted to do was use the cover of the Freaknik in order to cover up all of the bones and skeletons that they have in their sexual graveyard. Because what Marc Lamont Hill doesn't really understand is that women are just as sexual as men, and women have the same sexual desires as men, and there are many women who went down to that Freaknik to get their freak on, and they hope to have anonymity among all of those individuals in that party to be able to go out and hook up with a couple of dudes. And what they are scared of is that Luke and his crew, which were having cameras to record this event are going to shine a light as related to the ratchet behavior that they participated in, and that's what's got everybody apprehensive as related to the black community. You've got black men and black women who are now educated professionals who have their degrees and have their jobs, and they don't want anybody shining a light on all of the ratchet and raggedy behavior they were participating in at the Freaknik, where they were getting their freak on, and they are scared of that information coming out as related to this so-called documentary, where many of these producers are out here trying to show receipts as related to their ratchet behavior, because many of these people over the last 30 years, they have grown up, they have gotten married, they've had children, and as Mr. Superboy said on G-Boot's show last week, a lot of these people are afraid of being exposed for being hypocrites, because some of these people now say they are Christian, and they're oftentimes telling their kids to abstain from things like casual sex, and what they don't want it to be revealed is that they were out here getting their freak on during the Freaknik, and as they were out here getting their freak on at the Freaknik, they were out here just doing things that they told their kids not to do. And what a lot of these people again are ashamed of is, oh, people are going to find out that I was sexual. I was out here having sex with different people. And again, they're embarrassed and ashamed of their behavior today that they participated in yesterday. And what we have are opportunists like Marc Lamont Hill looking to take the entire events of Freaknik, which were basically co-opted by white supremacy when Luther Campbell came in, because once Luther Campbell came in and helped commercialize Freaknik, that's where white supremacy changed the narrative of Freaknik to fit white supremacy's narratives of black people being sexually promiscuous, and then they further looked to capitalize on this by going out here and creating this documentary. But Marc Lamont Hill wants us to believe black men are the face of sexual predation and doesn't want us to take a critical look at the manipulation that white supremacy is doing with this event of Freaknik. What they are doing with this Freaknik documentary is looking to try to rewrite history as related to this whole Freaknik event, and they want to make it where they can go out here and look to control black people through fear, because what they want black people to do is be scared and ashamed of the sexually promiscuous behavior they participated in. And that's what Marc Lamont Hill wants to do. He wants to make the black man the face of sexual predation and sexual violence, when many of those black males could not be sexually promiscuous if there weren't complying and willing females, because there are women who wanted to have sex with these men. And again, while there may have been some possible sex crimes, there was a lot of black men and black women participating in casual sex at these events, no different than what went on during white spring break events that took place in places like Florida and California, where a lot of these white girls were going down to places like Florida and California. And this was talked about on many episodes of Jenny Jones in the 90s. It was talked about on many episodes of Jenny Jones about girls going down to places like Miami and places like LA and other places like Virginia Beach, going down to spring break, going down to go drink, going down to go meet and hook up with guys. I mean, this was talked about regularly on Jenny Jones and Ricky Lake and many other shows, where they wanted to meet the guys that they hooked up with, and it was seen as something casually entertaining on those shows. However, when it comes down to black people and this Freaknik, you've got black people freaking out about this Freaknik, again, made to feel shame about participating in their sexually promiscuous behavior. Meanwhile, the white kids dealt with this way back in 1996 on an episode of Jenny Jones or an episode of Ricky Lake. and they have moved on with their lives, and nobody has cared about those white folks. But the black person is sweating and being afraid because what white supremacy wants to do is demonize black sexuality and black people expressing themselves sexually. What they want to do is demonize black people expressing their natural sexuality and want them to feel ashamed of expressing that natural sexuality. And while were a lot of whoremonger males and out there participating in sexual promiscuity, that's not a crime like Marc Lamont Hill wants to make it. No, it was not a crime. And again, these women were willing participants who went to these events. Many of these women went out here and willingly went down to Florida to go get with these guys, just like they went out here to get with those older guys when I was in high school, going out here getting with the dope boys and the gang members. And many of those same girls, when they started going to college, were participating in the exact same behavior. And again, we have people like Marc Lamont Hill and people and places and media outlets like Hulu trying to make it look like, oh, these black people were so-called freaks and looking like they were getting their freak on as related to this sexual promiscuity. And that was never the original intention of the black women who created this party. No, this party was created for the historically black colleges and universities. It was an HBCU event, and it was an HBCU event that was designed to be positive. Unfortunately, a whole group of people were out here looking to change the narrative, and those people who were looking to change the narrative invited Luther Campbell. And once Luther Campbell and the mainstream media got involved, white supremacy turned Freaknik into an orgy, and they turned it into an orgy to fit their idea of black people, not be the idea that it was originally created by those sisters at Spelman College. And again, Marc Lamont Hill will sit there and say he's a reporter when it's clear to me that he's not competent at all, because if a guy from the Bronx can go out here and do research on this Freaknik event and find out the entire history of it, and then show you what it looked like in the larger picture of history, then why couldn't Marc Lamont Hill do that? Critical question I would ask Marc Lamont Hill if I ever ran into him. Why are you trying to make it look like black men are the sexual predators at the Freaknik during a time when O.J. Simpson was on the air? And with O.J. Simpson on the air, the Freaknik party, if there was all sorts of stuff like that going on that's related to sex crimes, there would have been a break that would have actually blown the O.J. Simpson trial out of the water. And again, I was about 20 years old, going on 21 in 1994, and I was in college at the time. Never really heard about Freaknik because I was too busy working on getting my degree and working on trying to get my first good paying job. And again, I wouldn't have wanted anything to do with that because, again, as a servant of the Most High, I was looking to go out here and build a relationship with him at the time. But I don't really go out here and want to judge anybody who has gone out here and been a part of that whole event, because that's just the way people are. And again, human nature is human nature. People are going to be people. And again, there were a lot of girls out there who were looking to hook up with these guys. And what's happened is there's a lot of women who have skeleton bones and a lot of dudes who have skeleton bones about those hookups. And what they want to do is that they're terrified of those skeleton bones coming out. And they're scared that, oh, something is going to come out. But if people love you, they will understand. They will understand, yeah, you were young, you were in your late teens, your early 20s, and you were out here doing stuff, and you were out here doing this stuff, and yeah, that's a part of who you used to be. And a lot of people learned hard lessons as related to this Freaknik. So I'm not getting too upset about what went on 30 years ago, because 30 years ago, when you were a teenager or a 20-something, you were a completely different person. And because you were a different person than you are right now, I can't get too mad at a bunch of kids going down to one of these parties because that's what kids do. And that's what kids are going to do. Again, they're going to go down to these parties and go hook up with people. I mean, I don't condone this because I don't condone premarital sex, but this is what people do. And again, can't get mad at people for what has already been done. And again, while a lot of people are sweating in their boots about their hypocrisy, the whole thing is they have to understand that the Most High forgives. And again, he died on the cross to pay your sin debts as related to events like this. So you shouldn't get too upset about this. And I hear about people, oh, I want to sue about this whole event, talking about I didn't give my permission. Well, the whole thing is back in 1992, 3, or 94 when this went on, Luke had to get a release in order to use that video, and he possibly had that release from that video he used in 1994, and that release is still binding. So a lot of people are sitting up here sweating and terrified, and it's just sad. But the whole thing is what's even worse is you've got opportunists like Marc Lamont Hill who want to use this Freaknik documentary as an opportunity to demonize black men as the face of sexual predation, when all it takes is a simple little bit of research and to see that while there were alleged sex crimes that were there by one or two individuals, there were a whole lot of people participating in casual sex because they had heard about Luke Campbell and him coming down there, and they wanted to go out here. And again, these were not HBCU people coming to do this. There were a lot of people coming to this event looking to change its narrative because Luke was there. And a lot of those people who came to that event, they were not just non-HBCU people. There were a lot of underage teenagers who did go to this event. And again, lots of skeleton bones coming out. But the whole thing is they want to try to make Freaknik an event that was, again, created by black women to be a positive party. They want to change the narrative to make it fit white supremacy's narrative. And what they want to do is make it look like Freaknik was one big orgy. And again, this is about white supremacy looking to try to frame black people around their racist ideas. And then what they're using is a bootlick like a Marc Lamont Hill to frame that narrative. And that's what makes him extremely reprehensible. I mean, here you have a black man looking to lick the boots of white supremacy, looking to push the narratives of white supremacy regarding black men, and looking to try to make black men the face of sexual predation at an event 30 years ago, when if you did some research on the event, you would find that it never had anything to do with sex. No, it had to do with black people having a good time. And what they want to do is try to demonize black men and say that black men are about sexual violence, when there was never anything about sexual violence at most of these Freaknik events. No, that was all brought in by whites and others from the mainstream and their black bootlicks like Luther Campbell. They went and tried to change the narrative of Freaknik. And again, we're not getting a complete comprehensive story about Freaknik. And again, we have a whole lot of people in the mainstream trying to stoke fears about Freaknik. They want to stoke fear and get people scared about this documentary, and they want to get people scared, and again, because they want to shame black people for being sexual, and they want to shame black people for expressing their sexuality. This is all about demonizing black men, black manhood, and black masculinity, and they're using a black bootlick like Marc Lamont Hill to demonize black men, black manhood, and black masculinity. And that's what's absolutely disgusting about Marc Lamont Hill and his statements. He's trying to change the entire narrative of Freaknik, when if you just did a little research, you would find the real story. And that's why you cannot trust platforms like the Griot, which are all about promoting anti-black racism and white supremacy with black faces. That's why you can't trust those outlets, and this is why we need new black media like myself to come out and tell the real story and present you all of the facts so that you can make a critical decision as related to all of the facts as related to this whole Freaknik issue. And then when you do look at those facts, you see that it wasn't just black men going out here and getting their freak on. No, it was black women too. And for Marc Lamont Hill to demonize black men without holding the black women accountable shows me how much of a simp and a mangina he is, and shows me how weak this male is, because only a weak male looks to blame black men and not hold black women equally accountable, because again, it was black men and black women both participating in this event, and it was black men and black women who are both quaking in their boots, wanting to try to avoid any sort of issues as related to what happened 30 years ago. But as I see it, you need to leave the past in the past and focus on empowering black people today and in the future. Now, if you want to pick up some of my positive black fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, and my sorority novel, The Thetas, and my vampire novel, Eternal Night, you can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find those books at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes, Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Given to temptation, pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation